What's your plan if 80% of your weather-related losses simply vanished from your balance sheet with no insurance payout in sight? According to studies, that's the reality facing businesses across Asia Pacific right now. And while nature batters one side of the ledger, governments worldwide are weaponizing economics in ways that could fragment global trade as we know it. Coming up on Unbreakable Ventures, we're unpacking the Allianz Risk Barometer 2026 and the staggering protection gap leaving billions in losses uninsured. Plus, the World Economic Forum's latest warning about geo-economic confrontation, reshaping how nations do business. And in our quick fire segment, healthcare cyber threats, resilience debt, and critical AI infrastructure vulnerabilities you need on your radar. It's been a busy fortnight in the world of risk. It never stops, and neither will we. Welcome to Unbreakable Ventures. I'm Ollie Law, and you are listening to our Fortnightly risk update, where we dive into emerging and current risks from around the world. We focus on some big stories, and some you may have missed. We use the categories from the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report to simplify the threats we're monitoring, but we also do some deep dives and interviews with industry peers. It's Monday, the 26th of January 2026, and we're covering the world's global threats over the last fortnight. So grab a coffee and let's get into it. I want you to picture yourself running a manufacturing operation in Southeast Asia. A typhoon tears through your supply chain, and you discover that 80% of your losses won't be covered by insurance. This hypothetical scenario is actually reality to many businesses as the new year unfolds. It's the stark reality revealed in this year's Allianz Risk Barometer. Natural catastrophes have surged to become the second highest global business risk. And the protection gap in Asia Pacific is leaving businesses dangerously exposed. But the threats don't stop at the weather. The World Economic Forum has just released its Global Risk Report for 2026. And surprise, surprise, the findings are sobering to say the least. State-based armed conflict sits at the top of short-term risks. Meanwhile, economic warfare through tariffs, sanctions, and investment controls is fragmenting global trade. The very foundations of international commerce are shifting beneath our feet. And as Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said in Davos this week, we are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. So today, we're asking two critical questions. How do you protect your business when insurance won't cover the climate bill? And how do you navigate a world where economics has become a weapon? Let's find out, shall we?
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The powerful have their power, but we have something too. The capacity to stop pretending, to name reality, to build our strength at home, and to act together. That is Canada's path. We choose it openly and confidently, and it is a path wide open to any country willing to take it with us.
The Allianz Risk Barometer is one of the most comprehensive surveys of corporate risk out there. This year, they surveyed 3,778 risk management experts. These experts span 106 countries. We're talking CEOs, risk managers, brokers, and insurance specialists. And their findings should have every business leader paying attention. Natural catastrophes have climbed to the second highest global business risk. Just 2 years ago, in 2024, they sat at number 6. Now, 31% of respondents say extreme weather is their top concern. Only cyber incidents rank higher at 38%. But for me, here's where it gets really concerning for those of us operating in the Asia-Pacific region. The protection gap exceeds 80%. Let me say that again. More than 80% of weather-related losses in Asia Pacific are uninsured. Think about what that actually means for a moment. When disaster strikes, the vast majority of economic damage falls directly on businesses and governments. It doesn't get transferred to insurers, it sits squarely on your balance sheet. The numbers from 2024 paint a vivid picture. Asia Pacific suffered $65 billion in economic losses from natural catastrophes. Only $12 billion was covered by insurance. That's a $53 billion gap. $53 billion that businesses and governments had to absorb themselves. So, what keeps risk managers up at night when they think about natural disasters? Business interruption tops the list at 60%. It's not just about the physical damage, it's about the operational paralysis that follows. Damage to corporate assets and real estate comes second at 53%, and climate change overall now ranks as the fourth most important global risk. But here's what many businesses miss. Supply chain disruptions from extreme weather don't respect borders. A typhoon in Southeast Asia can halt production schedules in Europe. Floods in Australia can disrupt delivery timelines across continents. Your exposure isn't limited to where your facilities sit. It extends to every supplier and logistics partner in your network. So, who should be most concerned about this? If you have manufacturing or logistics operations in Asia Pacific, listen carefully. Production facilities in typhoon-prone regions of Southeast Asia are exposed. Warehouses in flood-vulnerable areas of South Asia face significant risk. Operations in bushfire-exposed zones of Australia need attention. Potentially uninsured losses could threaten your operational continuity and financial stability. Property and infrastructure investors should also take note. Real estate developers and infrastructure funds with significant Asia-Pacific portfolios may find valuations increasingly disconnected from actual climate risk, especially where insurance coverage assumptions prove unrealistic or simply unavailable. And if your supply chain depends on Asia-Pacific suppliers, their uninsured weather losses become your business interruption risk. It doesn't matter how robust your own insurance position is. Financial institutions with Asia-Pacific loan books face credit risk from borrowers experiencing uninsured catastrophic losses. Remember, collateral values may be impaired by climate events. So what can you actually do about this? First, conduct granular climate exposure mapping. Move beyond generic regional assessments to asset-level analysis. Identify which specific facilities face flood, typhoon, wildfire, or extreme heat exposure. Quantify potential business interruption duration and cost under realistic disaster scenarios. Second, stress test your insurance assumptions. Review existing policies with a critical eye toward actual coverage triggers. Look carefully at exclusions and limits. Many businesses discover post-event that business interruption coverage has waiting periods, so they find contingent business interruption has insufficient limits, or parametric triggers don't match actual loss scenarios. Third, build supplier redundancy in exposed regions. Develop qualified alternative suppliers outside your primary climate risk zones. Pre-negotiate contracts and logistics arrangements that can activate rapidly when disasters strike. Fourth, establish climate contingency reserves. Given the protection gap reality, budget for self-insured climate losses as a normal cost of operations. Create dedicated reserves or access to liquidity facilities. These can absorb uninsured losses without threatening core business viability. The 80% protection gap isn't going to close overnight. The insurance industry is grappling with how to price climate risk. Many are pulling back from high exposure regions entirely. So the responsibility falls on business leaders to understand their true exposure and to build resilience that doesn't depend on insurance payouts that may never come. Before we move on to our second threat update, we're sharing our quick fire emerging threats segment covering the last fortnight. These will be noteworthy stories we think you should know about, but less detailed than our two core threats analysed. Australia's healthcare sector faces unprecedented cybersecurity pressure as patient data becomes increasingly valuable to attackers. Organisations are simultaneously rushing to integrate AI systems that expand their attack surfaces. Legacy medical devices with outdated security now connect alongside new AI diagnostic tools processing sensitive health records. Ransomware gangs specifically target healthcare, knowing operational disruption endangers lives. Zero trust architectures and thorough AI vendor security assessments are essential. Dell Technologies research reveals organizations are accumulating dangerous resilience debt. They focus cybersecurity investments on prevention and detection while systematically underinvesting in recovery capabilities. The gap between assumed and actual recovery capabilities only becomes apparent during genuine incidents. Organizations discover their backup integrity is compromised or recovery procedures are untested. Regular recovery exercises using realistic attack scenarios are critical. Cyber attacks against energy infrastructure have escalated significantly. Nation-state actors and criminal groups recognize the sector's critical importance. Operational technology systems designed for reliability and safety often lack modern security controls. Air-gapped networks have been progressively connected for remote monitoring and efficiency gains. Energy operators must implement network segmentation between IT and OT environments immediately. Security researchers have identified multiple severe vulnerabilities in the Anthropic Git model context protocol server. Attackers could potentially execute arbitrary code on systems running the integration. This highlights broader risks in the rapidly expanding ecosystem of AI infrastructure tooling. Security testing often lags deployment pressure in these environments. Organizations should immediately review vendor security advisories and apply available patches. Research from Expel reveals a persistent disconnect in cybersecurity investment. Budget allocation often follows vendor marketing or compliance requirements rather than empirical threat analysis. Organizations frequently overinvest in high-profile but lower probability threats. Common attack vectors remain inadequately defended. Security leaders should implement data-driven investment frameworks that correlate spending with incident frequency and impact. Further sources and references can be found in the footnotes of this podcast. But without further delay, let's look at our second threat update this week. The World Economic Forum has just released its Global Risk Report for 2026. This is the same report Unbreakable Ventures and our senior analysts base our framework on. It's a big deal in our office. And the headline findings demand attention from business leaders everywhere. State-based armed conflict now sits as the top short-term risk globally. Over 50 conflicts worldwide claimed approximately 200,000 lives during 2024. That's the highest annual toll in nearly 3 decades. But what caught our attention is what sits at number 2, geo-economic confrontation. This is where economics becomes weaponized. Tariffs, sanctions, investment screening, all things you've probably seen a lot of out of the US. These aren't just trade policy tools anymore. They're instruments of geopolitical competition, and they're fundamentally reshaping global trade and investment patterns. There's simply too much to unpack in one segment. So I should mention that we'll be producing a separate deep dive podcast examining the full report in a coming episode. So make sure to subscribe today as not to miss this. But today I want to focus on what this fragmentation means for your business. The report introduces a powerful theme called fractured foundations. It describes how trust in multilateral institutions is eroding. Global supply chains are fragmenting. International cooperation is declining. And these trends create compounding vulnerabilities across economic, technological, and environmental domains. Misinformation and disinformation rank as the third most severe short-term risk. AI-enabled synthetic content is becoming increasingly difficult to detect and counter. Coordinated information operations threaten democratic processes, market stability, and corporate reputations. When you look at the long-term picture, environmental risks dominate. Aligning to the report findings in our first story, extreme weather events rank as the most severe risk over a 10-year horizon. 41% of expert responses identified this as their top concern. Biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse follows at 39%. Critical change to Earth system sits at 36%. The WEF surveyed over 900 experts across academia, business, government, and international organizations. And they're warning about cascading scenarios like environmental stress triggering conflict that then disrupts supply chains, and disrupted supply chains that accelerate economic fragmentation. Each risk amplifies the others. So who should be most concerned about geoeconomic confrontation? Export-dependent economies and businesses face increasing pressure. You may need to align with one power block or risk losing market access. Tariff escalation and exclusion from critical supply chains become real possibilities. Technology and semiconductor sectors face expanding export controls. Investment screening and supply chain localization requirements are fragmenting previously global markets. You may need duplicative R&D, manufacturing, and compliance infrastructure. Commodity and energy traders face heightened sanctions risk. Payment system fragmentation and logistics disruptions are growing. Resource access is becoming intertwined with geopolitical alignment. Multinational corporations operating across geopolitical divides face a particular challenge. Regulatory regimes are becoming increasingly incompatible. Data localization requirements vary by jurisdiction. Reputational risks from association with either bloc in contested markets are real. So, what can you do to navigate this fractured landscape? First, map your geoeconomic exposure across operations. Identify which revenue streams depend on specific trade relationships. Quantify exposure to tariff escalation, sanctions expansion, or market access restrictions. Run realistic fragmentation scenarios. Second, develop block-agnostic operational capabilities where feasible. Build redundant capabilities that can serve different geopolitical blocks independently. This includes localized supply chains and regional data infrastructure. Market-specific product variants can reduce dependency on cross-block flows. Third, establish geopolitical monitoring and scenario planning. Move beyond reactive crisis response to continuous monitoring. Track trade policy developments, sanctions announcements, and diplomatic shifts. Develop decision trees for operational adjustments triggered by specific escalation thresholds. Fourth, diversify currency and payment system exposure. Reduce concentration in any single payment infrastructure or reserve currency. Establish relationships with financial institutions across multiple jurisdictions. Develop capabilities to settle transactions through alternative mechanisms if primary channels become restricted. The rules of global commerce are being rewritten. Economic measures that were once exceptional are becoming routine. The businesses that thrive will be those that build flexibility into their operations. They'll maintain optionality across geopolitical divides, and they'll treat geoeconomic risk as a permanent feature of the landscape, rather than a temporary disruption. These reports are valuable and provide insights into the world we continue to adapt in. Your responsibility as leaders is to decide how you act with the information you have. That's it for today's update. If you need help navigating these threats or building a plan to protect your business, the same advisors who collate these insights are here to help. Head over to unbreakableventures.com to book a complimentary chat online with one of them. And if you found this resource useful, consider subscribing to Unbreakable Ventures or sharing the article with your network. After all, resilience is about community and communication. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, stay safe.
Unbreakable Ventures is brought to you by the senior advisory team at Fixing, a boutique resilience advisory based in the Oceania, ASEAN and India regions. Special thanks to our sponsor and Europe's leading SaaS provider for resilience software, F24. Our resources are researched and published by industry specialists across New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia and the UK. This podcast provides advice and opinion on disaster recovery and the threat landscape. The content is not a substitute for expert guidance during a crisis. Unbreakable Ventures is trademarked by Fixing Consulting Partners, a Fixing Group company.